Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Super English Talks. My name is and I'm so happy to have you here with me today. If this is your first time listening, I want you to know something important. You didn't come here by accident. You're here because you want to improve, to grow, and to become a better version of yourself. And the good news is, you are not alone. We are all walking on this journey of learning together. On this channel, we share educational lessons every single day.
Why?
Because we truly believe that when knowledge is shared with kindness and love, it can change lives. Even one small idea, one useful tip, or one new word can make a big difference. So, if you're ready to keep learning, to feel inspired, and to believe more in yourself, then stay with us. Don't forget to subscribe, because together we'll take this path of learning step by step, one day at a time. In our past episodes, we have already talked about important skills like how to build your vocabulary, how to make your grammar stronger, and how to speak with more confidence and less fear. But today, we're going to go even deeper. We're going to talk about something that many of you have told me is the hardest skill to master when you reach the intermediate level. And that skill is listening. Listening is what makes the difference between feeling connected in a conversation or feeling lost and left out. And don't forget, we bring you new shows every single day, so you will always have fresh material that is made to help you practice, improve, and grow, little by little, day by day. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like this? You can read articles in English. You can write emails in English. You can even explain your ideas quite well when you have time to prepare. But then you try to join a real conversation or you watch a movie without subtitles and suddenly, it feels like everything happens too fast. All the words join together. You understand some of the words, but the full meaning disappears in a wave of sound. Does that sound familiar? This happens a lot with learners at the intermediate level. You already know your grammar. You already have a good vocabulary. But understanding real, natural, fast English, that is still very difficult. It feels just out of reach, like something you can almost touch, but not quite. If this describes you, then today's episode is perfect for you. Stay with me until the end, because we're going to look at why listening feels so difficult for intermediate learners. What is happening when you struggle to understand? Powerful strategies you can use to finally bridge the gap between knowing English and understanding English in real life. And these strategies are not just theories. They come from the experiences of real people, students and professionals like Emily, David, Mike, Clara, and Dr. Sarah Chen. People just like you who faced the same problem, but step by step, found ways to overcome it. By the end of this episode, you will have clear, practical ideas that you can start using right away to improve your listening skills. So, get comfortable. Maybe grab a cup of tea or coffee. Relax, and let's begin this journey together. Because here's the truth. For many English learners, listening feels like the last big challenge. It is often the final skill that takes the longest to master. I hear this story all the time. You work hard. You can read long, difficult texts. You can write detailed emails. You can have conversations if you have time to think about your sentences. But when the language is fast, natural, and unprepared, you suddenly feel lost. And that's exactly why today's episode is here, to help you turn that weakness into one of your strongest skills. But then, when you listen to native speakers talking naturally at their usual fast and flowing speed, it suddenly feels much harder. They use informal words, quick expressions, and a rhythm that is very spontaneous and not always clear. Or maybe you sit down to enjoy a movie or a TV show without subtitles, and instead of relaxing, you feel like you've hit an invisible wall. It's frustrating, isn't it? The words seem to blend together into one long sound. People from different places speak in different ways, and their accents can feel like a puzzle. And sometimes, even though you know many of the individual words, the whole meaning just disappears. You end up feeling upset, tired, or even a little defeated. It feels like you're so close, almost there, but there's still this small, stubborn gap. I call this problem the intermediate listening paradox. You know a lot of English, but you can't always hear it clearly when it's spoken naturally. So, why does this paradox exist? Why is listening especially hard for intermediate learners? It's not only because people speak fast, although yes, speed is part of the challenge. The deeper reasons are a little more hidden. They are not about grammar or dictionary meanings. They are built into the very way English is spoken. Let's look at some of these hidden difficulties that often make learners feel stuck. 1. Connected speech. When you read a book, every word is clear and separate. Each word has its own space on the page, and you can easily see where one word ends and the next begins. But in real spoken English, that separation disappears. Instead of clear islands of words, speech becomes a long river of sound. Words often join together, change, or even drop sounds completely. For example, going to as two clear words. But when spoken quickly, it often sounds like gonna. Wanna easily becomes wanna. This is what makes listening so tricky. You may know the words in their full form, but in real life, you hear a very different version. 2. Assimilation. This is when one sound changes to become more like the sound next to it. Your mouth naturally adjusts to make speaking easier. For example, the phrase don't know often doesn't sound like don't know. Instead, it can sound like dunno or even donk know. The phrase 10 points often changes to sound more like 10 points. The N sound in 10 changes because of the P sound that follows. This isn't sloppy or lazy speech. It's just how English works naturally. 3. Elision. Elision means a sound completely disappears in fast, natural speech. Examples. In next time, the T in next often disappears. It sounds like next time. In fish and chips, the D in and often disappears. It sounds like fish and chips. In cup of tea, the V sound in of often disappears. It sounds like cup tea. This happens all the time, and it's why listening can feel like you're missing pieces.
4. Linkinker.
In some kinds of English, especially British English, the R sound at the end of a word connects smoothly to the vowel at the beginning of the next word. For example, far away sounds like far away. There is sounds like there's. The R glues the words together, so instead of hearing two separate words, you hear one connected phrase. All of these little changes, connected speech, assimilation, elision, and linking are natural parts of English conversation. They are not mistakes. They are the way real English flows. And this is exactly why intermediate learners often feel confused. You already know the words, but the spoken forms are not always the same as the written forms. That small difference can make a big gap in understanding. When we speak English in real life, we don't usually say every single word slowly and separately. For example, we almost never say far away with a clear pause between the words. Instead, we say it smoothly so it sounds like far away, almost like one word. Another example is clear up. On the page, you see two separate words. But when we speak quickly, we often connect them, so it sounds like clear up. This connection makes our speech sound smooth and natural, instead of slow and choppy. 5. Reduction weak forms. Now, let's talk about something even more challenging for many learners: reduction. This happens when some words in English lose their full, strong sound and become shorter, softer, and weaker. Very often, the vowel in these words turns into a tiny sound, a sound called the schwa by linguists. This usually happens to words that are not the main focus of a sentence, words like small grammar helpers, prepositions, conjunctions, auxiliary verbs. Native speakers don't give them full stress. Instead, they reduce them so the important words stand out more. Here are some examples. The word for often sounds like fair. The word from often sounds like FRM. In the sentence, I have to go, the word to is reduced, so it sounds like have to go. This can feel very confusing. You know the word to from your textbooks. You expect to hear to clearly. But instead, in real speech, you hear a quick little sound like ta. That's why sometimes it feels like native speakers are removing words or speaking differently from the way it's written. But don't worry, nothing is missing. These are just the normal weak forms that help English flow more smoothly. Strong forms versus weak forms. Here's the key idea. Many common words have two forms. Strong form, the full, clear sound, usually used when the word is emphasized or spoken alone. Weak form, the short, reduced sound, used in normal, fast, connected speech. For example, can in normal speech is weak. I can do it sounds like I can do it. But if you emphasize it, yes, I can do it, you hear the full strong form. For in fast speech becomes fair. This is for you. This is fair you. But in strong form alone, it's for. Recognizing these weak forms is essential. Without them, native English sounds like a blur of missing words. Once you train your ear, you'll start hearing the hidden words that are actually there. Quick listening practice. Let's try a little practice right now together. I'll say a few sentences twice. First, I'll say them slowly, the way you might expect from a textbook. Then I'll say them naturally, the way people really speak. Ready? Sentence 1. Slow. What do you want to do?
Natural. Vadia wana du.
Notice how what do you became wadia and want to became wanna. Sentence 2. Slow. Where are you from? Natural. Where are you from? Here, R reduces to a quick re/ya and U reduces to ya. Sentence 3. Slow. I have to go now. Natural. I have to go now. Here, have to reduces to have to. Did you hear the difference? The words are the same, but they sound completely different when spoken quickly and naturally. This is why listening can feel like such a challenge for intermediate learners. You know the words individually, but when they shrink, change, or disappear into weak forms, it feels like a whole new language. The good news is, once you start recognizing these patterns, connected speech, assimilation, elision, linking, and reduction, your listening will improve dramatically. As an intermediate English learner, your job now is to train your ears slowly, step by step. The goal is for your brain to start recognizing these common shortened words and connected sounds automatically. It's not only about speaking this way, though speaking with natural connections will definitely make you sound more fluent and smooth. The main goal is to understand it instantly when you hear it. At first, it may feel strange or even frustrating, but the more you listen to natural English, songs, movies, podcasts, conversations, the more your brain will begin to notice these patterns. After some time, you won't even have to think hard. Your ears will catch them naturally, and English will no longer sound fuzzy or unclear. It will begin to sound logical, smooth, and easy to follow, even when people talk fast. Intonation and stress. the music of English. Now, let's talk about another very important part of listening: intonation and stress. These two things are not just about pronunciation, they are about meaning, emotion, and attitude. English is what we call a stress-timed language. This means that in every sentence, some words are strong, clear, and important, while others are soft, quick, and often reduced. The important words, like nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, carry the main message. The less important words, like prepositions, auxiliary verbs, articles, conjunctions, are usually reduced, spoken more quickly, and almost hidden. At the same time, our intonation, the way our voice goes up and down, gives listeners clues about emotions, attitude, and even grammar. Why stress and intonation matter? If you only focus on the dictionary meaning of words, you might miss the real feeling behind the sentence. Stress and intonation can completely change how a message is understood. Take this simple sentence: he really enjoys learning. If I stress really, I'm saying, wow, he enjoys it a lot. Emphasizing intensity. If I stress enjoys, I'm saying, he enjoys it, not just pretends. Emphasizing the action itself. The words are the same, but the stress changes the meaning. Intonation as emotion. Intonation also carries emotions. Let's look at another sentence. I can't believe he said that. If I say it with a rising voice on that and maybe a little gasp, it shows shock or surprise. If I say it with a falling, flat voice on that and maybe a sigh, it shows disappointment or sadness. The words are the same, but the intonation changes the feeling completely. Thought groups. Punctuation for your ears. Another secret to listening well is learning to hear thought groups. Native speakers don't speak in one endless line of words. They break their sentences into smaller, meaningful chunks, almost like adding commas and periods when speaking. For example, when I went to the store, I saw my old friend. Notice the small pause after store. That pause helps separate the first idea, going to the store, from the second idea, seeing the old friend. If you try to understand the whole long sentence at once, it feels too heavy. But if you break it into smaller thought groups, it becomes much easier to follow. Why this is so important. If you don't pay attention to stress and intonation, you may understand the words, but still miss the deeper meaning. You might not realize when someone is being sarcastic, funny, excited, or angry. But if you train your ear to notice these sounds, the rises and falls, the strong and weak words, the natural pauses, you will open a whole new layer of understanding. You won't just understand the words. You'll understand the feelings, the intentions, and the attitude behind the words. And that's when listening becomes truly powerful. Core strategies for intermediate mastery. Active listening. Now, let's talk about how to actually train your ear to understand natural English. How do we close the gap between the clear, organized English you see in books and the fast, emotional, sometimes messy English that people use in real life? The answer is something called active listening. And this is very, very different from just hearing sounds in the background. Passive listening versus active listening. Many learners, and this is completely normal, rely mostly on what I call passive listening. Passive listening means you play English sounds while doing something else, maybe cleaning your house, commuting to work, exercising, or scrolling through your phone. Now, passive listening does have some benefits. It helps you get used to the general rhythm of English. It makes English start to feel like a normal background sound. It helps your ears slowly get familiar with accents and tones. But here's the problem. Your brain isn't really focused. It's like trying to learn a complicated song by hearing it softly from another room. You catch the melody, but you miss the lyrics, the instruments, and the details. That's why passive listening alone will not help you make big progress, especially at the intermediate stage. What is active listening? Active listening is completely different. Active listening means giving English your full attention. You're not multitasking. You're fully focused on what you hear. It's like putting your brain into detective mode. You look for clues in the sounds. Pay attention to intonation and stress. Try to catch how words connect, shorten, or change. Actively make sense of what's being said, moment by moment. With active listening, you are not just hearing. You are working with the sound. Even if the work is happening only in your head, your brain is learning to connect sounds with meanings. This is exactly where intermediate learners make their biggest leaps forward. It's not casual practice. It's focused, intentional, and powerful. Two types of active listening. Inside active listening, there are two very effective methods that complement each other. Intensive listening, extensive listening. Both are important and both help you in different ways. Intensive listening. Think of intensive listening like using a microscope. Here, you take a tiny piece of audio, maybe a short clip from a podcast, a short dialogue from a movie, or even 1 minute of conversation, and you study it very carefully. You listen again and again. You pause often. You go back a few seconds and replay. You try to catch every single word. You notice sound changes, weak forms, and intonation. You might even look up new words or write down what you hear. With intensive listening, speed doesn't matter. Accuracy does. Your goal is to fully understand every sound, every word, and every meaning in that small piece of audio. Yes, it's slow. Yes, it takes patience. But this kind of training builds the strong foundation you need to understand fast English later. It's like training your ear muscles in the gym. You work slowly and carefully at first, but you get stronger day by day. This is exactly the type of practice where you train your ears to notice connected speech, weak forms, the words that carry emphasis, and any new vocabulary that appears. It's the foundation for becoming a strong listener at the intermediate level. Let me share the story of David, a smart university student from Seattle, who used intensive listening to overcome a big challenge. David's problem. David was preparing for a student exchange program at an American university. He was very excited about the opportunity, but he was also nervous about one thing: understanding academic lectures. In everyday conversations, David was fine. He could order food, chat with friends, and handle normal daily English without too much trouble. But when he sat in a classroom and listened to professors, he felt lost. The problems were: professors spoke quickly. They used a lot of special academic vocabulary. The sentences were long and complex. David said to me in frustration, "Sophia, I feel like I only catch every fourth word. By the time I understand one sentence, the professor is already 3 sentences ahead. I just can't keep up." This made note-taking almost impossible and left him feeling completely overwhelmed. The solution: intensive listening. I told David that what he needed was intensive listening practice. Instead of trying to listen to long lectures all at once, he should break the audio into small pieces and study those pieces in detail. Here's the step-by-step method David followed, which worked amazingly well for him. Step 1. Choosing the right audio. David carefully selected audio that was just a little more difficult than what he could comfortably understand. He chose short university lectures and academic podcasts. He made sure they included new vocabulary and fast speech, but were not so difficult that he couldn't understand anything at all. Very importantly, He always picked resources with transcripts or subtitles available, so he could check them later. Sometimes he used academic panel discussions with multiple speakers. This gave him practice hearing different speeds, tones, and accents. Step 2. Preparing his brain, pre-listening. Before listening, David didn't just press play immediately. He prepared himself. He read the title of the lecture. If there was a summary, he read it. He asked himself, what do I expect to hear?
For example,
if it was a debate, he expected to hear two opposing viewpoints. If it was a research presentation, he expected to hear the introduction, methods, results, and conclusion. This step was like warming up his brain before exercise. It gave him a roadmap of what might come, which made the listening process easier. Step 3. First listening, global comprehension. David then played one short segment, just 1 or 2 minutes of the lecture. He listened without looking at the transcript or subtitles. His goal was not to understand every word. His only goal was to catch the main topic, the general flow of ideas, and the big picture. This step is important because it stops you from obsessing over every small detail too early. It's about understanding the forest before studying each tree. Step 4. Second listening, keywords and phrases. Next, David played the same short segment again. This time, he listened more carefully, trying to catch any important technical words, any key phrases that seemed to carry the main meaning. Even if he didn't understand every detail, he wrote down these keywords quickly. This step helped him start identifying the most important vocabulary and noticing which words carried the real weight of the message. Step 5. Sentence by sentence breakdown, the hard but powerful part. This was the most difficult part of David's practice, but it was also the part that gave him the biggest results. He called it the tough love step. David would take just one sentence from a lecture, sometimes even just a short phrase, and play it carefully. Then he would immediately press pause. 1. Transcription, writing what you hear. David tried to write down exactly what he heard, word for word. This activity is called transcription. He didn't worry about spelling at first. If a word sounded strange, he wrote it as he heard it, even if it looked wrong compared to the standard written English.
For example,
if the professor said gonna, David wrote gonna, not going to. If the professor dropped a T sound like enters T-ing, David wrote it without the T. This forced his ears to notice weak forms, reductions, and connected speech patterns that normally slip by too quickly. By writing them down, his brain was forced to slow down and really see the sound details. 2. Shadowing, speaking like the speaker. After writing the sentence, David immediately repeated it out loud, right after the speaker. This technique is called shadowing. But he wasn't just copying words. He focused on pronunciation, how each word sounded, rhythm, the beat of the sentence, pauses, where the speaker naturally stopped, intonation, when the voice went up or down, thought groups, the way the sentence was divided into chunks of meaning. This was hard at first, but with practice, it helped him sound more natural when speaking. Train his brain to process English at full speed. Build automatic recognition of natural speech patterns. 3. Comparing with the transcript, the aha moment. Next, David checked his written transcription against the official transcript of the lecture. This step gave him many aha moments. For example, sometimes he wrote gonna, but the transcript showed going to. He realized this was reduction. Sometimes he missed a T or D sound. He discovered elision, sounds dropping out in fast speech. Sometimes he misunderstood where one word ended and the next began. He saw how connected speech blurred word boundaries. By comparing carefully, David learned exactly why he misheard things and slowly trained himself not to make the same mistake again. 4. Vocabulary beyond the dictionary. When David found new words, especially academic terms, he didn't just look up a quick dictionary definition. He took it further. He checked the pronunciation in the lecture. He searched for example sentences using the word in real context. He wrote his own simple sentences using the word to make it personal. He also paid close attention to discourse markers, phrases that help structure ideas in lectures. Examples. Firstly, on the other hand, to summarize, in addition. These are like road signs. They help listeners follow the speaker's train of thought and predict what's coming next. David found that noticing these words made lectures feel much more organized and less overwhelming. 5. Final review. Bringing it all together. After all this careful work, David played the same 2-minute segment one last time. This time, he didn't stop the audio. He didn't look at the transcript. He just listened straight through, enjoying the fact that he could now understand it much more clearly than the first time. This final step helped him reinforce what he learned, move the new sounds and patterns into his long-term memory, build confidence in his ability to keep up with fast speech. He often re-listened to the same segment on different days, which made the pattern stick even more deeply. The results. By practicing this way for just 20 minutes a day, David made huge progress. He trained his ear to recognize fast speech, reductions, and connected sounds. He built a stronger vocabulary, especially for academic topics. He could finally take clear notes in class. He no longer felt completely lost in lectures. When he arrived at the American University, the lectures were still challenging, but he now had the skills to handle them. He could follow the main ideas, predict structure, and even join discussions confidently. Intensive listening practice. Urban planning example. Now that you understand David's story and method, let's try a challenging practice activity together. This activity will help you sharpen your ear, just like David did. It's designed to push you a little outside your comfort zone. Step 1. Careful listening to the passage. Here's a short but slightly complex passage. Read it carefully, or if this were audio, listen very attentively. Passage. One of the perennial challenges in contemporary urban development concerns the seamless integration of eco-friendly infrastructure within existing, often dilapidated cityscapes. Proponents often emphasize the long-term benefits for public health and environmental sustainability. However, a significant hurdle resides in securing adequate funding and navigating the labyrinthine bureaucratic processes. Local residents, meanwhile, frequently articulate concerns regarding potential disruptions to their daily routines and the preservation of community identity. Consequently, successful initiatives invariably necessitate robust stakeholder engagement and innovative financial models. Step 2. Listening questions. Now, based on what you just read or heard, try to answer these questions without looking back. What is one of the perennial challenges in urban development? What do proponents emphasize as the long-term benefits? What is a significant hurdle in implementing these initiatives? What are 2 specific concerns local residents express? What do successful initiatives invariably require? Step 3. Check the answers. Here are the correct answers. The seamless integration of eco-friendly infrastructure within existing cityscapes. The long-term benefits for public health and environmental sustainability. Securing adequate funding and navigating bureaucratic processes. Disruptions to daily routines and preservation of community identity. Robust stakeholder engagement and innovative financial models. Step 4. Vocabulary focus. Here are some useful academic or formal words and phrases from the passage. Perennial challenges equals long-lasting, ongoing problems. Contemporary urban development equals modern city growth and planning. Seamless integration equals smooth, natural combining of two things. Eco-friendly infrastructure equals environmentally safe buildings, transport, or facilities. Dilapidated cityscapes equals rundown, old, or broken parts of a city. Proponents equals people who support or argue in favor of something. Environmental sustainability equals protecting the environment for future generations. Significant hurdle equals a major obstacle or difficulty. Labyrinthine bureaucratic processes equals very complicated and confusing government or official procedures. Articulate concerns equals clearly express worries or fears. Preservation of community identity equals keeping the character, traditions, or culture of a neighborhood. Consequently equals as a result. Invariably necessitate equals always require. Robust stakeholder engagement equals strong involvement of all people affected. Innovative financial models equals new and creative ways of funding projects. Step 5. Intensive listening technique. If you were doing this exercise the way David did, here's how you could practice. First, listen, get the general idea, urban planning problems plus solutions. Second, listen, try to catch keywords, eco-friendly, funding, residents' concerns. Transcription challenge. Take one sentence, pause, write exactly what you hear. Shadowing. Repeat the sentence out loud, copying the speaker's rhythm and intonation. Check transcript. Compare what you wrote with a real text. Look for reductions, missed sounds, or difficult vocabulary. Vocabulary expansion. Pick 3 to 5 new words, learn how they are used in real sentences, and practice using them yourself. Final, listen, play, or read the passage again, and notice how much easier it is to follow after this deep practice. This is how intensive listening turns a very difficult passage into something clear, manageable, and unforgettable. You don't just hear words, you really understand structure, meaning, and nuance. Intensive versus extensive listening. 8th balanced approach. Intensive listening equals zooming in closely. You dig deep into a short passage, pulling out every detail. Connected speech, nuanced vocabulary, academic phrasing, pronunciation patterns. This is where you sharpen your ear for accuracy and grow your sophisticated word knowledge. Extensive listening equals zooming out. Imagine standing on a mountaintop and taking in the whole view. You listen to long stretches of language, podcasts, audiobooks, documentaries, full news segments, without stopping every few seconds. The goal here is stamina, flow, and natural comprehension. You focus on the general meaning, the story, or the argument, and you let yourself enjoy the experience. For intermediate learners, the key is balance. Intensive practice 15 to 20 minutes, a few times per week, dissecting short clips with high focus. Extensive practice 30 to 60 minutes daily, enjoying longer content for immersion and natural fluency. This combination builds both precision and endurance, a holistic approach that accelerates comprehension and confidence. Advanced hurdles in listening. As your listening improves, you'll notice English isn't just one language. It's a kaleidoscope of accents: American, British, Irish, Australian, Indian, Nigerian, and many regional variations. Dialects, local speech patterns within the same country. Register and tone, formal versus casual, academic versus everyday. Colloquial language, slang, idioms, phrasal verbs, informal fillers. Even if you know all the words individually, Hearing them in a different rhythm, accent, or context can be confusing. Case study: Mike's accent challenge. Let's return to Mike, our learner from Boston. Mike had practiced with standard British English materials, where pronunciation was clear, formal, and predictable. But when he moved to a small rural town in Ireland for an engineering job, his ears were suddenly immersed in a different rhythm of speech. Local expressions he'd never seen in textbooks. Words shortened, blended, or said with sounds he didn't recognize. At first, Mike felt lost. He understood English, but this didn't sound like the English he had studied. It felt like a living puzzle, full of personality, charm, but also challenge. Instead of giving up, Mike applied targeted strategies, which we'll explore next. Training his ear with authentic local content. Building a notebook of informal expressions. Noticing rhythm and melody more than just individual words. Asking for clarification and learning to hear meaning even when words sounded unfamiliar. This is the reality of advanced listening, mastering not just the standard version of English, but its diverse, living variations. Mike's struggle with the Irish accent. When Mike first moved to a small town in Ireland, he was excited. He had already studied English for years and could use it very well at work. In meetings with his engineering team, he understood everything. The technical terms were clear. His coworkers spoke in a professional way, and Mike felt confident. But outside of work, everything changed. The local Irish accent was strong, fast, and full of words and sayings he had never heard before. At the pub after work, his colleagues laughed, joked, and used expressions that didn't sound like the English he had studied. Mike wrote me an email one evening. He was very upset. He said, "Sophia, I understand my coworkers perfectly in meetings. But at the pub, it feels like a completely different language. They say things like, 'What's the crack?' or 'He's a gas man.' I just stare and smile, but I don't understand. I feel like I'm missing out on half of life here, half of the friendship and connection." Mike's problem was not just the Irish accent. It was also the informal, cultural way of speaking. People weren't using textbook English. They were using local idioms, casual expressions, and humor that belonged to the Irish community. Learning to listen differently. I explained to Mike that he needed to train his ear in a new way. It wasn't enough to just generally understand English. He had to notice the special sounds and patterns of the Irish accent, things like how vowels were pronounced differently, how stress and intonation worked in sentences, how some sounds disappeared or changed when spoken quickly. At the same time, he also needed to learn the local phrases and idioms that people used every day. So I gave him a plan. Listen to local Irish content, radio shows, podcasts, local news, and storytelling. Ask questions politely, simple phrases like, "Could you say that again, please?" Or, "What does crack mean?" Most people are happy to explain if they see you're interested. Study with comedy and talk shows, where informal, real-life English is used naturally. Mike's daily training routine. Mike took this seriously. Every evening, he sat down with Irish comedy shows or popular talk shows. At first, he watched with English subtitles. Then, he watched again without them. He paid close attention to the jokes and punchlines. At first, he didn't get why people laughed. But slowly, he realized it was because of idiomatic expressions. For example, "What's the crack?" meant, "What's the news? What's going on? Are you having fun?" "He's a gas man" meant, "He's a very funny person." By learning these, Mike started to understand not just the words, but the humor and culture behind them. He also focused on the sounds of the Irish accent, For instance, in some Irish accents, the vowel in house or out sounds different from American English. Sentences had a distinct rhythm, almost like a melody. At first, it felt confusing, but over time, he started hearing patterns. The accent no longer sounded like a blur of fast sounds. It started to sound like a unique kind of music that he could follow, from outsider to insider. After weeks of consistent practice, things began to change. At the pub, Mike started catching more and more of what his colleagues were saying. He didn't just sit quietly anymore. He could laugh at the jokes, respond naturally, and even use some local expressions himself. The first time Mike used the phrase, "What's the crack?" at the right moment, his coworkers smiled and laughed with joy. He wasn't just the American engineer anymore. He was part of the group. Mike told me later. At work, I felt like I belonged from the beginning. But it was only after I understood the accent, the phrases, and the rhythm of everyday Irish English that I truly felt at home. The lesson from Mike's story. Mike's experience shows something very important. Learning English is not only about grammar and vocabulary. To really connect with people, you need to understand accents, idioms, humor, and cultural expressions. The best way to do this is through focused listening to authentic local content, asking for clarification, and practicing every single day. By training your ear and your mind this way, you stop feeling lost. Instead, you start to enjoy the beauty of different kinds of English and feel the joy of belonging to the culture where you live. Systematic accent exposure. To really understand English in the real world, listening to generic English isn't enough. You need to actively expose yourself to different regional accents. 1. Explore regional accents. English is spoken differently depending on where you are. For example, American accents, Southern, New England, Californian. British accents, RP, received pronunciation. Cockney, Scottish, Irish. How to practice. Use YouTube interviews featuring people from different regions. Listen to podcasts that tell stories from a specific place. Pay attention to the sounds of vowels because they often define an accent. Words like bath, dance, car, can sound very different depending on the accent. 2. Imitate for recognition. You don't have to speak like the accent, but trying to imitate the sounds or rhythms helps your brain recognize them more easily when you hear them. Shadowing with different accents is highly effective. Repeat what you hear. Copy the intonation, rhythm, and vowel sounds. Quick practice. I can't believe it's almost time for tea. Sounds like a standard British accent. Y'all come back now. Southern American accent. Recognizing these distinct sounds comes from varied, repeated exposure. Idioms, phrasal verbs, and slang. These are some of the hardest parts of natural English. Their meanings are often non-literal and deeply tied to culture. 1. Idioms. Idioms are phrases where the whole meaning cannot be guessed from the individual words. Example: kick the bucket means to die. It has nothing to do with actually kicking a bucket. 2. Phrasal verbs. A phrasal verb combines a verb plus preposition or adverb. The meaning often changes completely from the individual words. Examples: put up with tolerate. Look up to admire. Take off can mean leave quickly, remove something, or fly a plane. 3. Slang. Slang is informal, often tied to a particular group or time. Examples: cool, awesome, hang out. Slang is everywhere. In workplaces, cafes, social conversations. Understanding slang helps you blend into everyday conversations naturally. Clara's story. Idioms in action. Clara, a skilled graphic designer in New York City, was excellent at professional English. She understood presentations, emails, and client meetings perfectly. But she struggled in social conversations because of idioms and phrasal verbs. She told me, "Sophia, I understood that he was going somewhere, but then they said he really took off after the meeting. I didn't know if he was angry, just left quickly, or flew a plane." Even knowing the words wasn't enough. She needed to understand the cultural meaning behind them. Context is everything. When you encounter idioms, phrasal verbs, or slang, look at the words around them. Consider the situation. Pay attention to the speaker's tone.
Example:
I'm on cloud 9 today. I just got a promotion. Even if you've never heard "on cloud 9, you can guess the meaning from context. Very, very happy. Key takeaways for intermediate learners. Seek out specific regional accents. Don't just listen to generic English. Focus on vowel sounds and rhythm. Try shadowing to recognize them better. Learn idioms, phrasal verbs, and slang as whole units, not word by word. Use context, situation, and tone to understand tricky expressions. Expose yourself daily to authentic, varied English, TV, podcasts, interviews, comedy, to strengthen both comprehension and cultural understanding. Inferring meaning from context. One of the most important skills for intermediate learners is figuring out the meaning of words and phrases from context. This means not stopping at the first phrase you don't understand. Instead, you should keep listening. Look at the overall meaning of the conversation. Look for clues in the situation, tone, or words around the phrase. This skill is especially important for idioms and phrasal verbs because their meanings are often not literal. Focus on common idioms and phrasal verbs. Don't try to learn every idiom or phrasal verb at once. Start with the most common ones. There are many online lists of the top 100 or 200 idioms and phrasal verbs. Tips for learning. Keep a phrase book or digital notes. When you find a new phrase, write it down. Look up its meaning. Check how it's used in sentences and in different situations. Focus on context and register. Notice who says it and when. Soak up authentic content. Movies, TV shows, podcasts, and stand-up comedy are full of idioms and slang. How to practice. Watch with English subtitles first. This helps connect the sounds to the written words. Watch again without subtitles. This helps you hear how they are used naturally in conversation. Notice tone, context, and situation. This helps you understand meaning even if you've never seen the phrase before. Understanding phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs are tricky because a small change in the particle can completely change the meaning. Example: look up search for information. Look down on feel superior or think less of someone. Another example: take off can mean leave, a plane leaving, or something becoming successful quickly. Tip: learn phrasal verbs as whole units. Don't try to translate word by word. Use them carefully. As an intermediate learner, it's usually better to focus on understanding idioms and phrasal verbs before trying to use them in your own speech. Using them incorrectly can sound unnatural or even funny. Start by recognizing them when you hear them. Gradually use only the most common ones in your speaking when you feel confident. Quick practice. Try to figure out the meaning of the highlighted phrases in these sentences. The new manager laid off 10 employees last week. Laid off dismissed employees, often because there's not enough work. After working all day, I just wanted to chill out on the couch. Chill out, relax, or calm down. He always looks up to his older brother for advice. Looks up to, admires, or respects someone. When the new product launched, it took off immediately. Took off became very successful very quickly. I tried to explain the situation, but he just kept beating around the bush. Beating around the bush, avoiding the main point or topic. Key takeaways. Context is everything. Always look at the situation, tone, and surrounding words. Start with common idioms and phrasal verbs. Build your understanding gradually. Watch and listen to authentic English, movies, podcasts, TV shows. The more you hear these phrases in context, the more they become a natural part of your comprehension, and you won't need to think about the individual words. Processing speed and responsive speaking. Improving your listening skills isn't just about understanding words. It's deeply connected to speaking naturally and confidently. For intermediate learners, one of the biggest challenges is the time it takes to process what you hear and then respond. Think of it this way. Listening is the high-quality fuel. Speaking is the engine. If the fuel is slow or low quality, the engine cannot run smoothly. The faster and more accurately you process spoken English, the faster and more naturally you can respond. Clara's challenge. Clara, our skilled graphic designer from New York City, faced this exact problem. She could understand the words, but her brain still had to decode weak forms, idioms, and context, leaving almost no energy for thinking of a response. She often missed her chance to contribute to conversations because her mental RAM was full with just processing the input. Her problem was a classic case of low processing speed and insufficient listening memory. Active listening for faster responses. To improve, Clara needed to practice active processing. Listen intensely to small segments of natural conversation. Immediately summarize what she heard. Practice rapid response drills to reduce lag time. Clara's daily plan. She focused on short, structured listening exercises. 3 to 5 minute segments from conversational podcasts, interviews, or YouTube vlogs. Each segment included natural dialogue, fast speech, and informal phrases. Her method included 3 key steps. 1. Active prediction. Before listening, she didn't just think about the topic. She tried to predict what language would be used, the type of questions, and possible responses. Example, if the topic was a career interview, she anticipated questions about challenges, successes, future plans. This primed her brain to process faster. 2. Listen and identify main points and attitudes. She listened to a short segment once. Then, she immediately wrote down 2 to 3 main ideas or the speaker's attitudes. Were they enthusiastic, skeptical, or humorous? This helped her focus on meaning, not every single word. 3. Shadowing for speed. She picked a 30-second to 1-minute segment from the audio. Shadowing means speaking along with the speaker, copying.
Speed.
Rhythm. Intonation patterns. Pitch changes. Key points about shadowing. You're not just repeating sounds. You're actively training your brain and mouth to process speech at native speed. Shadowing reduces the lag between hearing and responding. It helps you sound natural in real conversations. Why this works? Active prediction prepares your brain for what's coming. Identifying main points and attitudes trains you to focus on meaning, not every word. Shadowing builds listening and speaking speed simultaneously, so your brain learns to handle fast, natural English. For intermediate learners, combining these techniques dramatically improves both listening comprehension and real-time speaking confidence. If you want, I can now create a full, simplified step-by-step intermediate listening and speaking guide. It would include connected speech, weak forms, reductions, accent exposure, idioms, phrasal verbs, and slang, intensive and extensive listening exercises, shadowing, and rapid response drills. It would be like a complete workbook for intermediate learners. Summarize out loud. Instant response drill. After shadowing a short audio segment, Clara would stop the audio and immediately try to summarize what she had just heard out loud. She aimed to keep her answer short, natural, and to the point, as if she were in a real conversation. Sometimes, she recorded herself to check her speed, clarity, and coherence. This practice strengthened her listening memory, the ability to hold spoken information in your mind long enough to respond confidently without losing track of the conversation. Response drills, simulated dialogue. Clara also practiced with short clips ending in a question or prompt. Listen to the prompt.
Pause the audio.
Formulate and speak a response immediately, usually within 10 to 15 seconds. This simulates the pressure of real-life conversation, training the brain to respond quickly. Retelling stories and arguments. She would listen to a short story or a two-sided argument. Immediately retell it or summarize both sides in her own words. Focus on speed and coherence. This pushed her beyond passive understanding, turning her listening practice into active speaking practice. The results. Within a few months, Clara noticed big improvements. She could join social conversations more quickly. Her thinking time before responding became much shorter. She started contributing ideas, asking relevant questions, and even adding small stories or jokes. Her confidence grew, and she enjoyed social chats in English like never before. Her story shows that shadowing and instant summarizing drills train your brain to process speech faster, reduce the time gap between hearing and speaking, make you an active participant in conversations, not just a listener. Quick practice. Let's try a short listening and instant response exercise.
Dialogue.
A. Hey, did you catch the game last night? It was a real nail-biter. B. Oh no, I missed it. Was it good? A. Absolutely. Went into overtime, and then they won by a single point in the last second.
Task. Think fast.
Answer this out loud, as naturally as you can. Question. What happened in the game? This type of practice trains you to listen, process, and respond quickly, bridging the gap between comprehension and real-time conversation. Quick practice. Respond immediately. Before we move on, try this. Question. What was the game like, and what was the final result? Answer out loud immediately, without thinking too much. Did you say something like, it was exciting, very close, and they won in overtime by 1 point? If so, great job. This is exactly the kind of fast processing and response we want to train. The goal is to hear, understand, and respond naturally, just like in a real conversation. Cultivating a listening lifestyle. The ultimate aim for improving your English listening skills, especially as an intermediate learner, is to make it steady, practiced regularly every day, enjoyable, something you look forward to, not a chore, consistent, small, repeated sessions add up over time. The more you integrate listening into your daily life, the more natural it becomes. Over time, you won't just be understanding English better. You'll feel comfortable, confident, and engaged in real conversations. Dr. Sarah Chun, a model of lifelong listening. Dr. Sarah Chun, a well-known medical researcher from California, shows how dedicated listening can become a lifelong habit. She started learning English as a child in school. Her career in medical research required advanced English skills, including understanding complex scientific lectures, picking up subtle questions and implied meaning, recognizing cultural nuances in international teams. quickly processing different accents during high-stakes discussions. Dr. Chen's listening was not just about words, but about true communication, leadership, and cross-cultural understanding. Her listening practice. Dr. Chen didn't look for quick fixes. She committed to decades of consistent, deliberate listening practice. Even though she was already fluent, she kept improving by making listening a core part of her daily life. Her approach included extensive listening for daily life. She listened to science podcasts from all over the world. She didn't only focus on her own field, but explored different scientific topics. This helped her understand a variety of speaking styles and accents. Documentaries and audiobooks. She watched science documentaries, paying attention to how narrators explained complex information clearly. She listened to audiobooks about history, biographies, and literature during commutes or flights. This wasn't just for enjoyment. It was constant exposure to real, authentic English, helping her absorb varied vocabulary and sentence structures naturally. Challenging content. She intentionally chose material that was slightly above her comfort level. This forced her brain to process new words, phrases, and accents, building stronger listening skills over time. Key takeaways. Listening practice isn't just a short-term activity. It's a lifestyle. Make English listening daily, varied, and interesting. Mix intensive listening, focus on details, with extensive listening, follow long stories or content for overall understanding. Seek out different accents, speech rates, and cultural contexts. Even advanced learners like Dr. Chin continue improving by consistently exposing themselves to English in meaningful, challenging ways. By making listening a habit and lifestyle, you'll develop natural comprehension, faster processing, and a lifelong confidence in English. A defining moment for Dr. Chen. A very important moment in Dr. Sarah Chen's career happened during a large international medical conference. She had just presented her groundbreaking research to a global audience. After her talk, she was leading a discussion group when a well-known professor from Australia asked a very complicated question. This professor had a distinctive accent and a dry, subtle sense of humor, making his question tricky to understand. In the past, Dr. Chen might have needed to politely ask him to repeat or explain his question. But now, after years of dedicated listening practice, everything had changed. Her brain was trained to adjust quickly to different accents, understand complex, multi-layered questions, catch subtle humor and underlying meaning. Dr. Chen didn't just understand the question. She answered clearly, precisely, and confidently, using advanced academic language she had absorbed through her listening practice. Her response was smooth, accurate, and even witty, earning the respect and admiration of everyone in the room. This moment showed that her years of consistent listening practice had become a permanent skill. It wasn't just about solving one problem. It became an essential part of her professional growth and personal development. Even as she became a highly successful researcher, Dr. Chen never stopped listening. She understood that language is alive. It changes, evolves, and adapts. Constant listening helps you stay connected, sharp, and ready for new voices, new phrases, and new ways of speaking. Her story shows that improving your English listening is a lifelong journey. It brings personal satisfaction, professional rewards, and transforms frustration into effortless understanding and confident communication. The power of consistent listening. Dr. Chen's example shows one of the most important lessons for English learners. Consistent, careful listening every day is one of the most valuable things you can do to improve your fluency. Listening is the foundation for speaking smoothly, responding quickly, and feeling confident in any situation. Final advice for intermediate learners. As you continue your English learning journey, remember, welcome challenges. Words may run together, accents may vary, and idioms or phrasal verbs may seem confusing. These are not obstacles. They are puzzles to solve and treasures to discover. Balance your practice. Intensive listening. Focus on small segments, analyze sounds, connected speech, intonation, and grammar. Extensive listening. Listen to longer content like podcasts, movies, or documentaries for overall comprehension and fluency. Make listening a lifestyle. The more you actively engage with English daily, the easier it becomes to understand natural speech and speak confidently yourself. Remember, listening is the foundation of your English fluency. With consistent practice, patience, and curiosity, you can transform frustration into understanding and hesitation into confident, natural conversation. Key practices to improve your listening skills. To become really good at English listening, there are a few important habits and techniques you can practice every day. 1. Shadowing. Shadowing means listening to someone speak and trying to speak along with them at the same time. Focus on pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation, how the voice goes up and down. This helps your mouth and ear work together, making your speech more natural and helping you understand English more quickly. 2. Build your listening memory. After listening to something, summarize it out loud in your own words. Try doing this under time pressure, as if you were in a real conversation. This strengthens your listening memory and speeds up your brain so you can respond faster. 3. Exposure to accents and real-world English. Listen to different accents and regional dialects. Use authentic content like podcasts, YouTube videos, movies, TV shows, or interviews. This helps you adapt to many different ways people speak and makes your understanding more flexible. 4. Practice idioms and phrasal verbs. Keep a note of new idioms, slang, and phrasal verbs you hear. Learn their meaning and how they are used in different situations. Start with common phrases and focus on understanding them in context before using them yourself. 5. Patience and small wins. Be patient with yourself. Listening skills take time to develop. Celebrate every small success. Recognizing a new connected speech pattern. Understanding an idiom. Responding faster in conversation. Each small step is progress forward. 6. Your brain and ear are amazing. Your ear can adapt to new sounds and patterns. Your brain can process and understand English faster with practice. With consistent effort, you will be able to understand what people mean, not just the words they say. Enjoy jokes and humor. Pick up on subtle emotions. Connect naturally with people in English. Making listening a part of your life. Turn listening into a daily habit you enjoy. The more you practice, the more effortless your communication becomes. Every moment you spend truly listening is a step closer to confident, natural English. Encouragement and next steps. Keep listening and keep learning. Share your biggest listening challenges or your success stories. They help you reflect and inspire others. Follow content like the Super English Talks for daily tips, lessons, and stories. With steady practice, patience, and love for the language, your listening skills will become remarkably sharp. You'll not only hear words but truly understand meaning, emotion, and intent. The world of English communication will open up to you, giving you more confidence, richer experiences, and better connections with people. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I truly hope you enjoyed this episode and that it not only helped you with your English, but also gave you something useful for your life. If you like this podcast, please remember to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. You can also share it with a friend who may enjoy it too. And if you want to practice your English, try talking about this topic with someone else. When you share your thoughts, you not only improve your speaking, but you also remember what you learned more deeply. So, until next time, take care of yourself, be gentle with your mind, and try to enjoy each moment as it comes. Goodbye for now, my friends.